A flash of light crosses the sky above a quiet suburban block on a Saturday afternoon. Seconds later, every engine, radio, and telephone on the street goes dead at once. Neighbors wonder if it was only a meteor, then start wondering about each other. This is the Twilight Zone's The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, directed by Ron Winston in 1960. Rod Serling created the series and wrote this episode himself. The street is called Maple Street, and it will not stay peaceful for long. By the end of the night, these neighbors will accuse each other of being monsters in disguise. Claude Akins plays Steve Brand, the neighbor who tries to keep reason alive as panic spreads down the block. Barry Atwater plays Les Goodman, the mild-mannered neighbor whose stalled car turns him into the street's first suspect. Jack Weston plays Charlie, the neighbor who grabs a shotgun before anyone else grabs the truth. Jan Handzlik plays young Tommy, the boy whose comic book theory about aliens sets the entire panic in motion. Rod Serling wrote a second ending for this story that no camera ever filmed. The published version pushes the story somewhere the broadcast never dared go. The story reached print only months after the broadcast, buried inside a paperback short story collection. That ending goes further than anything CBS allowed onto the screen in 1960. Almost nobody who knows this episode by heart has ever actually read it. That buried ending, the one nobody filmed, is where this countdown finishes. Fact 20. Rod Serling did not invent this story's famous ending from nothing. In 1951, Serling wrote a radio play called The Button Pushers. That doomsday drama ended with two rival nations racing to push the same button. In the end, two aliens on a distant planet discover that Earth has vanished. The aliens shrug, note that humans destroyed themselves, then simply move on. 9 years later, Serling reused that closing structure for Maple Street. On screen, that panic ends with Charlie firing a shotgun at a shadow. Two aliens then watch the wreckage from a nearby hillside instead of a radio studio. Few fans of the episode know its ending started as a doomsday script years earlier. Fact 19. Steve Brand's porch was not built for this episode. The block was New England Street on MGM's Lot 2. That same porch had already served for years as the Hardy family home. MGM used it again and again for its Andy Hardy comedies. Crews simply redressed a set built for gentle family films. On screen, Steve leans on that porch railing while his neighbors accuse each other. A fire later destroyed part of the block, burning down a nearby church. MGM rebuilt the street 2 years afterward for the film Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Decades of Hollywood history sit behind that one quiet front porch. Fact 18. René Garrigues composed the original music for this episode. Garrigues' cues carried titles like Tommy's Outer Space Story and Lights and Hysteria. The main title heard over the narration came from someone else entirely. Bernard Herrmann wrote that theme for the show's very first season. Herrmann was already famous for scoring Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho and Vertigo. Season 1 never used the twangy guitar theme most fans remember. Marius Constant wrote that now-famous theme a year later, for Season 2. Lud Gluskin conducted the orchestra that recorded Garrigues' score for Maple Street. On screen, that score swells whenever Charlie points a finger at a neighbor. Fact 17. This entire episode was filmed in just 4 days. Cameras rolled September 29th through October 2nd, 1959. 2 props had to be rented just for this shoot. An ice cream vendor's bicycle and a power mower cost Cayuga Productions $50. The Maple Street sign, yard decor, and parked cars cost another $750. Crews filmed the spaceship's exterior on the evening of the final day. That shot became the very last piece of footage completed for the episode. On screen, Steve Brand is still arguing with his neighbors when that spaceship briefly appears. Cayuga Productions was Rod Serling's own company, formed specifically to produce the series. Fact 16. 3 separate pieces of this episode came from a different movie entirely. The alien uniforms worn by Sheldon Allman and Bill Walsh came from Forbidden Planet. That 1956 MGM film also loaned its retractable spaceship stairway for this episode. The closing shot of a ship in flight is Forbidden Planet footage, reused. Editors flipped that footage upside down and reversed it so audiences would not recognize it. On screen, the two aliens walk down that borrowed stairway to watch Maple Street burn. The same reverse spaceship shot reappeared later in the episode, Third from the Sunday. This was already the third Twilight Zone episode to reuse Forbidden Planet's props or footage. Fact 15. Burt Metcalf plays Don Martin, one of the more panicked neighbors on the street. On screen, Don is among the first to start pointing fingers at Les Goodman. The year before this episode, Metcalf played surfer Lord Byron in the original Gidget. 12 years after Maple Street, Metcalf moved behind the camera entirely. Metcalf joined MAS x H, the CBS war comedy, as an associate producer. Metcalf stayed with that series through all 11 seasons and 256 episodes. Metcalf became the show's executive producer, the only person to last the entire run. The man once accused of hiding a monster later ran one of television's most honored shows. Fact 14. Jan Handzlik plays Tommy, the boy whose comic book theory starts the entire panic. On screen, Tommy warns his neighbors that aliens already look just like them. Before this role, Handzlik originated young Patrick Dennis on Broadway in Auntie Mame. Handzlik played that role opposite Rosalind Russell for 2 years on stage. Handzlik then reprised the part in the Oscar-nominated 1958 film version. After Maple Street, Handzlik largely walked away from acting for good. Handzlik earned a law degree at UCLA and became a trial lawyer. Handzlik eventually chaired the American Bar Association's National White-Collar Crime Committee. The boy who accused his neighbors later spent his career defending the wrongly accused. Fact 13. Barry Atwater plays Les Goodman, the neighbor most of the street turns against. On screen, Les stands accused simply because his car starts on its own. 9 years later, Atwater played Surak, the founder of Vulcan Logic, on Star Trek. 3 years after that, Atwater played an actual vampire named Janos Skorzeny. That role came in The Night Stalker, a 1972 ABC television movie. The Night Stalker earned the highest ratings of any television movie up to that point. Akins, his Maple Street co-star, also appears in that movie, playing the sheriff. 12 years after playing a suspected monster, Atwater finally played a real one. Fact 12. Teachers wanted to show this episode to their students almost immediately. Brooklyn principal Joseph Janofsky asked Serling directly for a 16mm print. City College professor John Bauer made the very same request. So many schools asked that CBS eventually refused every single request. By April of 1960, Serling was writing apology letters instead of granting favors. Serling explained to the United States Army that CBS had adopted a blanket refusal. There simply were not enough prints to meet the demand from classrooms nationwide. On screen, the very lesson those teachers wanted is Tommy's neighbors turning into a mob. The episode had become a classroom tool faster than CBS could supply film reels. Fact 11. 4 years before Maple Street, Serling tried to dramatize a real killing directly. The 1956 teleplay, Noon on Doomsday, was inspired by the murder of Emmett Till. Sponsors and network lawyers stripped that script far beyond recognition. Network lawyers moved the setting to New England and erased any trace of the South. The murder victim became an unnamed foreigner instead of a specific person. Serling later said the script was gone over with a fine-tooth comb by 30 different people. That fight over Emmett Till is why Serling turned to metaphor for Maple Street. On screen, that same morning hides inside Les Goodman's stalled car and Charlie's raised shotgun. Fact 10. This episode sat unfinished for months after the cameras had already stopped. Filming wrapped in early October of 1959, right on schedule. A November letter from the production office pushed the broadcast back anyway. The letter cited unspecified production problems and moved the air date to early 1960. Script pages dated November 12th suggest scenes were revised after filming had ended. Something about the finished cut was not working, though no memo says exactly what. On screen, Steve Brand's porch looks as calm as ever, with no hint of the delay behind it. The episode meant to open in late 1959 did not air until March of 1960. Fact 9. Claude Akins earned $500 for playing Steve Brand. Ann Barton, Burt Metcalf, and Jan Handzlik were each paid that same rate. Jack Weston, playing the trigger-happy Charlie, earned the highest fee on the call sheet. Weston walked away with $850 for 4 days of work. The episode's full production budget totaled $56,888. Most of that money, over $32,000, went straight to MGM's below-the-line charges. Rod Serling's own story fee was a small fraction of the total budget. On screen, Charlie is the neighbor viewers remember most, gun in hand. None of the actors knew this episode would outlast almost everything else they filmed that year. Fact 8. Not every early fan of this episode was fully satisfied with it. Earl Kemp of the Chicago Science Fiction League wrote Serling within days of the broadcast. Kemp praised the episode's integrity, but had one specific complaint. Kemp was tired of seeing MGM's overworked Forbidden Planet saucer again. Serling wrote back and admitted he could not defend that reused saucer either. Serling blamed tight budgets for forcing the production to reuse standard devices. On screen, that same saucer carries the two aliens away from Maple Street's ruins. A viewer's complaint about a recycled prop still reveals how tight Twilight Zone's budgets ran. Fact 7. Months before this episode aired, Serling made a promise to a newspaper columnist. Serling told New York Times columnist John Shanley that nothing in his new series would be controversial. Serling's exact words were, "I'm not writing any material that lies in the danger zone." 6 months later, Serling delivered Maple Street instead. The episode became one of television's sharpest studies of mob violence and scapegoating. On screen, that mob violence begins with Charlie grabbing a gun from Don Martin's hands. Serling had broken his own promise within half a year of making it. That broken promise is the quiet joke sitting underneath this entire episode. Fact 6. Serling rarely explained his own methods, but he did once, almost apologetically. Serling said he tried to insert a message so subtly it felt unconscious. Around the same time, someone asked him what kind of show he was making. Serling answered plainly, "The minorities always need a scapegoat to explain their own weaknesses." That line was not marketing, but Serling naming exactly what he had done. On screen, Les Goodman becomes that scapegoat the moment his car starts by itself. Serling had aimed that same, quietly stated point straight at his neighbors and ours. Nobody watching at home in 1960 missed what street he really meant. Fact 5. Winston directed this episode when he was only 27 years old. Winston went on to direct dozens more shows across the next decade. In March of 1973, Winston was rushing to catch a flight at Los Angeles International Airport. The director was scouting locations for a new film and got stuck in traffic first. Winston reached the airport, then suffered a fatal heart attack while running for his gate. Winston was 40 years old when he collapsed, still years from slowing down. On screen, Steve Brand is still standing on that porch, unaware of what was coming for its director. Winston died decades before streaming turned this small episode into required viewing. Fact 4. This episode's shadow stretches far past its original 1960 broadcast. In 2003, a new Twilight Zone revived the story, As the Monsters Are on Maple Street. Andrew McCarthy starred in that remake, which swapped aliens for government test subjects. In 2009, artist Rich Ellis and writer Mark Neese adapted the story into a graphic novel. That graphic novel came from a series developed with the Savannah College of Art and Design. Two silent aliens watching humans destroy themselves left an even stranger mark on television. Kang and Kodos, the recurring aliens on The Simpsons, are widely said to trace back to them. On screen, those original aliens never speak, only watch Maple Street burn. Fact 3. Rod Serling adapted this teleplay into a short story later that same year. The story appeared in a 1960 Bantam paperback called Stories from the Twilight Zone. In the book, Serling added an epilogue that no camera ever filmed. Television audiences never saw one single frame of what happens in that epilogue. On screen, the broadcast ends with two aliens on a hillside, already planning their next street. The printed version does not stop there, and it does not stay hopeful. Serling described what happens after the cameras would have kept rolling, if they ever had. What Serling wrote next is the buried ending this entire countdown has led to. Fact 2. Serling's printed epilogue opens the morning after Steve Brand's neighbors finish tearing each other apart. Serling described that morning as completely silent, with every house burned to the ground. Bodies were draped over porch railings and scattered across the sidewalks. By 4 o'clock that same afternoon, nothing resembling the old world remained. Then Serling added one more detail days later to his printed ending. New residents, he wrote, had already moved onto the street. Those new residents were the aliens, taking the street for themselves. The broadcast only hints that aliens might try this again somewhere else. The printed page shows them already moving in, with nobody left to stop them. Fact 1. Serling did not make his new arrivals frightening in his printed ending. Instead, Serling made them polite, almost charming, which is somehow worse. Serling described the new residents as a handsome race with great character. In Serling's exact words, they had excellently shaped heads, 2 to each new resident. The joke only works because Tommy's alien warning was played as childish nonsense on air. In the version Serling actually wrote, Tommy had been right about everything. In Serling's ending, Maple Street is not just destroyed, but quietly replaced. That printed ending never aired, never streamed, and still waits in a 50-year-old paperback. Almost nobody who loves this episode has ever read the ending Serling actually wrote. Rod Serling spent his whole career fighting to say things television did not want said. Maple Street proves he found a way to say the quiet part anyway. The ending he actually wrote still waits in print, unfilmed, more than 60 years later. If buried television history like this is worth digging up, subscribe for the next one.